The question is that the document be noted, and I call the member for Moreton.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. As a member of the Joint Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade, I rise to make a contribution on the interim report into the legal foundations of religious freedom in Australia. The Australia that I know and love is recognised as one of the world's most culturally, ethnically and religiously diverse societies. Despite our racist beginnings, modern Australia is a society founded on respect, acceptance and inclusion. A valued part of this diversity is everyone's freedom to practice the religion of their choosing. It's something often erroneously held in irretrievable conflict with the legislation to allow same-sex marriage, the removal of discrimination from the Marriage Act. Australians have a proud history of removing discrimination in our laws. Our proud initiatives include providing the vote for women, repealing discriminatory migration policies, or the recognition of the right of our First Peoples to vote, although this took far too long to occur. Reducing discrimination in all its forms is a matter of social justice. Every human being is worthy of respect and equality before the law, regardless of their age, their religion, race, gender, sexual orientation, occupation, level of income or ability or political beliefs. It is indefensible and unjust that two people who love each other are unable to marry because of their sexual orientation. This interim report evaluates and embraces the ability of everyone to enjoy religious freedom across many areas of society. A Senate Select Committee has already reported and considered the connection between same-sex marriage and religious freedom at length, including close examination of religious exemptions and exceptions. That particular report was the basis of the construction of a consensus bill being debated in the other chamber right now. Right now. I'm not speaking on that momentous legislation because I do not want to delay change by 10 minutes more. So, when reflecting on religious freedom and the report before us right now, it is timely for me to remind everyone that God did not write the Commonwealth Marriage Act. It was written by lawyers and legislators in ink, not etched in stone, and it must reflect the views and the values of Australians today. Every Member of Parliament is charged with ensuring our laws best balance and that they protect the values and beliefs of all the people we represent today, not yesterday and not tomorrow. What we know following the result in the postal survey is that Australians want discrimination in our Marriage Act removed, and this can be done without impacting on the ability of everyone to freely observe their own faith should they so wish. Every person of faith in Moreton needs to know that discrimination on the basis of religious belief or activity is already prohibited in at least some circumstances in the Australian Capital Territory, the Northern Territory, in Western Australia, Victoria and Queensland. I say that up front. The detail of the legislation is different in each jurisdiction. However, discrimination on the basis of religion is generally prohibited with respect to employment, the provision of goods and services, accommodation, education, membership of clubs and participation in sporting activity and provision of government services. The Australian Constitution includes limited protection for religious freedom in section 116. It prohibits the Commonwealth from enacting legislation that would prohibit the free exercise of religion or establishing a religion. Australia is a signatory to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, 1966, which was ratified in Australia on the 13th of August 1980. Article 18 of that convention gives specific protection of religious freedom. The tension between the right of non-discrimination and the religious freedom to discriminate in some cases was a common theme throughout many submissions made from the public. In fact, it was raised in a report that I chaired in 2012 in looking at the Stephen Jones's and Adam Baird's marriage legislation. While Moreton has fewer Christians than all other federal electorates in Queensland, can I say directly to Moreton's Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims, Jews, Sikhs or any other religious person in Moreton, the passage of the Marriage Amendment Definition and Religious Freedoms Bill will not affect the right of you or others to practice your faith. It will not affect the right of you or others to raise your children in accordance with the teachings of your faith, and it will not impact in any way your religious scripture. This change in legislation is about one thing only: removing the discrimination from our Commonwealth Marriage Act. Religious institutions already have the benefits of exemptions under anti-discrimination legislation. Those exemptions are limited and the limitations have been tested in the courts. So to dispel some of the misinformation, I refer firstly to the Cobor case. The Cobor case concerned the Victorian Equal Opportunity legislation. That legislation provides two exemptions for religious bodies or individuals. Firstly, that anything done by a body established for religious purposes where it conformed with the doctrines of the religion or was necessary to avoid injury to the religious sensitivities of people of the religion was exempt, not dissimilar to the Queensland anti-discrimination legislation. Secondly, it exempted discriminatory acts that were necessary for the discriminator to comply with the person's genuine religious beliefs or principles. The facts of COBOR were, in 2007, Christian youth camps operated the Phillip Island Adventure Resort. The COBOR Community Health Services ran a state-funded youth suicide prevention program for same-sex attracted youth called Way Out. COBOR attempted to book the Phillip Island Adventure Resort for a camp for 60 same-sex attracted youth and 12 youth workers. After the manager of Christian youth camps inquired as to the nature of the camp, he refused to allow the booking. That case first went to the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal with a finding that there was discrimination and the exemptions under the legislation did not apply. On appeal, however, it was held that Christian youth camps was not a body established for religious purposes and could not avail itself of the exemptions under the legislation. It was further held that even if it were a body established for religious purposes, the refusal of the booking was not necessary to avoid injury to the religious sensitivity of the adherents. The court was required to determine in that case whether the discrimination was based on the attribute of homosexuality. It was argued by Christian youth camps that the objections were not due to an opposition to homosexuality, but that it was an objection to the syllabus of the camp in promoting homosexuality by telling the youths attending the camp that it was a natural and healthy human sexuality. That argument was emphatically rejected by the court by way of a strong legal precedent. Judge Maxwell adopted the statement of the Administrative Tribunal saying, and I quote, "An objection to telling a person same-sex sexual orientation is part of the range of normal, natural or healthy human sexualities is in truth an objection to same-sex sexual orientation. It denies same-sex attracted people the same rights to live as who they are, to express their sexual orientation in the manner they choose, and to gather with others of the same sexual orientation and those personally associated with them, to discuss matters of particular significance to them by reason of their sexual orientation as heterosexuals enjoy." It is interesting to note that a similar argument to that rejected by the court in COBOR is being raised by members of the government this week. The member for Dawson yesterday said this in his second reading speech. "I've got to say that refusing service for a same-sex marriage is very, very different to refusing service to someone because they're gay. Refusing service to an individual because of who they are is very different to refusing service for a particular event which you might not be able to be part of because of your faith." Christian youth camps sought special leave to appeal the COBOR decision to the High Court. That special leave application was refused with costs. Note this. The COBOR decision demonstrates that religious institutions do have the benefits of exemptions to anti-discrimination laws to allow them to freely practice their religion, but the exemptions are balanced so that individuals are not discriminated against unless the discrimination is necessary for the practice of that religion. The Tasmanian Archbishop case. As often cited, this was where the Catholic Archbishop of Hobart, Julian Porteous, had a complaint lodged against him. He was the subject of a complaint under the Tasmanian Anti-Discrimination Act. Archbishop Porteous produced a booklet which outlined the Catholic Church's teachings on marriage for distribution in Catholic schools. However, I do point out that that complaint was eventually withdrawn. Maybe the complainant saw that their case had no chance of success. There is no doubt that tensions exist between the protections from discrimination on the one hand and religious freedoms on the other. Obviously, there are many limbs to the work we do in government. We need to debate and pass legislation, and what is happening in the other chamber right now is a change to the Marriage Act. Another important part of my work in Parliament is the work of committees like this one referred to in this report. They have a wider role, inquiring into matters referred to them and reporting on those inquiries. Committees look at the bigger picture. They take a wider view of the world, evidence from lots of people. They see if the balance has been achieved or if change is needed. It is appropriate that this committee is looking at this issue now. It should give people some comfort, especially those of faith who have concerns about the changes to the Marriage Act being debated in the other chamber. I know that they have some concerns about their free practice of religion. I do not have those concerns. As a Catholic, admittedly not the best Catholic in Australia, but someone who goes to church regularly, I know that I'll still be able to practice my faith freely, in the same way that I've done all my life. After the changes to the Marriage Act have been made law, there will be no change. And my final message to all those that are concerned about the legislation being debated right now, I wish all people in Australia a very, very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
I thank